Welcome to Spaces Between, a podcast about bringing gamers closer together. And today I have a very special guest, Chaz Marler. What's going on, man?
Hey, how you doing? It's actually so exciting to actually be back on the dice tower in a way, and so
I snuck Chaz back in. Let's do this.
Right under the restraining order. It's beautiful. So thank you for helping me weasel my way back on.
Oh man, if people don't know, Chaz does so much stuff. Chaz is part of Paradise. He's done tons of videos. He used to do videos on the Dice Tower. He does videos with Board Game Geek. He does all sorts of amazing stuff over there. And you also do like back-end like computer stuff or like website stuff with Board Game Geek as well.
Oh, yeah. That's actually a large chunk of what I'm doing with them so far has been actually, web development programming. There's the pre-order system that went up this year for like Origins Gen Con. So pre-order your games and then, buy them now, pick them up at the convention so you don't have any lines or whatever to wait in. You can just go get them at your leisure. I did a large part of the programming of that system. And so stuff like that for Board Game Geek is also what I'm doing.
So Chaz is deep into board game media and board game things,
Yes, I'm far deeper into this industry than I ever imagined I would be able to be. It's amazing. It's fantastic.
That's awesome. Do you still get a chance, find time to play games with all this working on board game stuff? Do you still, are you able to get stuff to the table and still have fun playing?
Actually... it's you gotta make time to schedule for it because you as a content creator as well, I'm sure you know that this stuff can really take over every waking moment of your life if you let it. So you really, the busier and busier I've been in the industry, the more necessary it has been to actually schedule the time and say, no, I'm going to have a life, in the evenings, or I'm going to do this on the weekends. And so I've been trying to schedule more time. Got away from me for a while, but trying to get more time. In fact, just day before yesterday, my wife, my daughter, and I started Clank Legacy. So we are
sweet.
Yes, we're just a couple of episodes into that, but man, so far it has done so well. I love Clank to begin with, and I love legacy games, and so far they are going together like peanut butter and chocolate, and then some jam on top of that. So.
I love Clank Legacy. Spoiler alert. It was actually, I just had a top 10 list that went up on the channel with me and Mike DeLisio, and Clank Legacy may have made an appearance at the very top of my list. So I really, really enjoyed Clank Legacy a whole lot. So
nice.
We ended up playing through the entire campaign, and not going to spoil anything, but you're in for a wild ride, and if you enjoy what's going on, then it's just going to continue. I mean, the one thing that I've loved about the game is the fact that you play some legacy games, and sometimes you'll play a legacy game and be like, okay, well, we'll open something up like a couple games from now. Like every single game of Clank Legacy, there's something new to do. It's awesome.
Nice. Yeah. I mean, just with the first game or two, it was, we were already changing the pads on the board. Things were being added, new spaces that were changing just right off the bat. The very first game, I was thinking, this will be an introductory game. No, we were thrown right into weird, neat stuff happening. Very first game. Really cool.
And it doesn't stop all the way through, which is
nice. Cool.
Yeah, well, hopefully y'all get to play through that and really enjoy it and stuff. So.
Yes.
What do you think? Is that are you playing that just to learn more about the game, or is there another game that you've played just for fun, that wasn't to create any sort of content for? Is there a game that maybe an older game you've gone back to, or what was the last game you think you've played not for your job at all?
Actually, it's interesting that you say that. Clank Legacy, that was the one. That was I did recently though. I did recently do a video that featured it in it. I did a video that showed the whole Clank line of games because there's so many. I was having trouble keeping track of them. I figured, if I'm having trouble with this, I bet other people are. So I'll make a video that kind of says all the different versions that are out there, just for my own sanity. And now that the video is done, it's good. Now I'm going to open this up and I'm going to play it just for me. So this has been that game for me. And another game, actually, oddly enough, that another game group of mine is finishing up it happens to be another Legacy game, and that's Betrayal Legacy.
Nice.
The Legacy version of Betrayal at House on the Hill. And just coincidence that it happens to be another Legacy game. It's not like that's all I play. But wow, Betrayal Legacy. Oh, that one has also been magnificent. Betrayal games, by their nature, are a little more haphazard and
for sure.
Yeah. You have to go in there with the mindset that this is not going to necessarily be a very strong, predictable rule set. Things are going to go off the rails, and you as a team are going to have to just decide sometimes what makes the best story. And but yeah, it has not disappointed at all. It's been great.
I think Betrayal is such an interesting game. I know it gets like a ton of flack for like people being like, oh, this rule set isn't good, or this game feels broken, or whatever. But when I first got into the hobby, playing Betrayal at House on the Hill was a game that we played all the time, and it was really fun. And I don't know, it's just one of those experience games, It's a game that you don't necessarily play to win or lose. You play to see what happens as the game goes along,
Yep. I think back on the stories I have to tell for gaming experiences, and more than one of them are stories from games of Betrayal at House on the Hill. The things that happen that you want to tell people about afterwards, that game just seems to have those in spades.
Honestly, like board gaming, like experiences like that is the thing that I'm most passionate. I'm known for like being, the thematic gamer, and he doesn't care about min-maxing points and euros and stuff like that. I love that kind of game, but like I really enjoy getting around the table with friends and making memorable moments,
Yep, I absolutely agree. I mean, that's really at the core why I think a lot of people enjoy this hobby. And just like you, I do especially. It's those moments with the friends, the stories that you're gonna come up with, the the inside jokes you're gonna refer to later, and just those experiences. That's what's gonna last.
Mm-hmm. So I recently saw you at PAX Unplugged, and that's when I was like, hey Chaz, you gotta come on my show. It's gonna be awesome. So how was PAX Unplugged for you, man?
PAX Unplugged was really cool. It was, I was thinking about it while I was there. I think it's the first convention I've gone to in like 3 years where I wasn't in a booth. I just went on my own to go. And of course, I went to talk to publishers and have meetings and do stuff because, of course. But I just walked around and it was fantastic. I got to go to the very first PAX, and I think this was the third or fourth one. I can't remember if it was. So I missed at least. Okay. I missed at least one of them, but I went back and I was surprised at how much it had already grown since the first one. The gaming area was bigger. It seemed like there was more booths. It definitely seemed like there were more things going on the other floors as well. But maybe it's just because I got to walk around and see more, and I wasn't stuck in a booth.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, but it was fantastic. It was a fantastic experience. I would definitely go to it again if I had the chance.
I know a lot of times when I see you at these bigger cons, it's always like Board Game Geek has a big production with their booth, and you're always interviewing more people, and you're switching people in and out. So you guys are always super slammed over there, trying to figure out what the newest hotness is and all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's what was nice is when we bumped into each other. I think I actually had just got done talking to someone else, and I was actually writing up notes on my iPad about it. But you bumped by, and I had this knee-jerk reaction of, oh, hey, I'm not on my way somewhere. I can chat with you. And we got to actually stand there and chat for a few minutes, and it was a rare treat.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting, like the different perspective you have on these conventions, doing it as like work and board game media and stuff. I mean, I feel like it's a totally different experience, and I do feel like it's a ton of fun because going to these conventions and meeting the people that consume our content, and like so many people stop you and come up to you and talk to you, and I don't know, I feel like that's part of what makes like doing this sort of thing so great, is being able to interact with the people that consume it and the people that enjoy it,
Oh yeah, definitely. And I'm always surprised that just when you walk through a convention or something, if someone does stop and say, "Oh, hey, I like your content," or "Thank you for making this," or "This video was really helpful to me," it never surprises me, because when we create content like this, so often it feels like we're just speaking into the void. Is anyone actually listening? And you kind of get that vindication that people are listening, and it does kind of help people, and gives them something to it entertains them for a while, or helps educate them as to what games are out there. Kind of finding out that this is useful to someone out there. That's a really nice feeling.
Nice. So I know you're into like like a lot of more like, I don't know, very, I don't know how to say it, like thematic-y type games, because I've seen you post about like War Machine, or not War Machine, but Mech Warrior and like Heroescape and all that stuff. And you used to have like a segment where you'd like upgrade different components in games and stuff like that. How important is like the aesthetics and like upgrading different games and things like that to you in your collection?
Oh, well, see, I actually kind of feel guilty sometimes making those videos because, to be honest, okay, to lie to you, I could say, no, especially as a content creator, I want to evangelize games. I want to be an advocate for the hobby, and the way games look, that's not what's important. It's the crux of the game, the nuts and bolts. That's really what's important. But that's a lie. I mean that if a game is good, it doesn't really matter what it looks like. You're going to play it. One of my favorite games is Yinch, I believe it is, and it's in the Glyph series or GIF series or something. But it's just basically black and white little circles and discs on this neat little board, but it's a fantastic game and I love it. And it's very abstract. But if I'm honest with myself, some eye candy on the table doesn't hurt, and I am drawn to that. It's not that it's necessary, but it is kind of a draw. I think, though, for me, if I may get philosophical and dig deep into my own history, I guess I'm here to talk, so I might as well talk about it.
Yeah, for sure.
When I was, yeah, sure, go ahead. When I growing up, that's a lot of what I did. I have an older brother and an older sister, and they are 6 and 7 years older than me. So there was this gap, where anything I was interested in, they kind of moved on from. And then we lived out in the boonies. We lived on 5 acres in this little town that had like 1,700 people. So we had like no neighbors. And so I didn't really have a kid next door I could go play with. So I spent a lot of my time kind of like, I've talked about how I would play Risk, 6-player Risk by myself, me playing all 6 people with different personalities. And so then I would take the pieces from the games and I'd mix them together to make new games and find other toys and stuff I had to kind of, come up with different things and mechanisms and stuff like that and components. And so I think that kind of planted a seed in me for the component upgrades and things, kind of taking those parts and those pieces and mixing and matching them to come up with new ideas when I was a kid.
I think it's a fun part and like an interesting part of the hobby that I feel like a lot of people out there in board gaming can relate to. I mean, there's people that paint their miniatures, people that are out there like seeking different upgrades and different ways to do it. I think it's like an interesting thing. Like even just like, how am I going to store this game? Like, let me go get this cool like tackle box thing to put it in, or maybe like sleeve this card, or like upgrade this miniature from this miniature to that miniature. I think that it's an interesting hobby side of board gaming, a way that you can enjoy your board games and be able to upgrade them and make them look better for when you actually get that chance to put it on the table in front of your friends and be like, look what we did to this game. I mean, I know the board game geek store even feeds into that. Like, hey, check out these cool components we're selling with this upgraded Quacks of Quedlingberg pieces and all that stuff. Or, I mean, I think board gamers enjoy like trying to figure out ways to make their games look better, more interesting, and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, no, I totally agree. You are not alone, because I know that you mentioned the Quacks of Quedlingberg little plastic upgrade components they have in the BGG store. Those BGG hasn't been able to keep those in stock at the conventions and on the online store. They just go as soon as a new batch comes in, they are sold out almost immediately. So yeah, it does have an impact on a lot of players. And just those little touches, those little improvements like that can have a big impact on the gameplay.
So when is the big Chaz Marler design coming out that you've been holding for all these years from when you were playing Risk 6 players and redesigning things?
I don't know.
Risk Chaz Marler edition. Co-designed by Rob Davio. No, just kidding.
Oh boy. I don't know. I don't have any plans to publish anything. However, I will tell you this. Back in, I would say, 2005, way before I even picked up a camera and started doing any board game media, back in like 2005, I did register the domain name of the game that what I would play with, what I developed as a kid, kind of evolved into. So I do have the domain name for the game registered, and I still have it today. But I haven't actually planned on like doing a Kickstarter or taking it to a publisher or anything like that.
I'm sure somebody's gonna be like, man, we gotta get this game. Like all the publishers are gonna be knocking on your door now, like the Chaz Marler. That's what it should say on the box cover instead of Chaz Marler, just the Chaz Marler, so everybody knows.
I agree. That's why I keep telling people. Finally, someone who agrees with me on that one. I would think one of the reasons I think maybe it's because I'm too close to it, or I've known its evolution. I fear it's just kind of some aspects of it are too much like Risk or Axis and Allies or other games that have been out there. Because again, I developed this game when I was, middle school, high school and stuff, just playing it by myself.
And I feel like you might have a little bit more experience now than back then.
Exactly. Yeah. There's so much, we're talking pre-Catan at this point. Mm-hmm. There's so much stuff that has been discovered and introduced and refined since then that has really just improved the way games play. And so in a way, I'm kind of like, do I want to take this out of this box and look at it and be embarrassed by, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm doing this dice. I can't believe I'm doing this dice mechanism like this. Look at that. Oh, brother. Yeah,
Roll to move? What was I thinking?
Yeah, I'm so embarrassed. Oh, yeah, exactly. So there's a little bit of that too that's built in. Kind of, is my memory a lot nicer to this thing than reality will have been?
I do wonder though, like how many. I mean, I feel like everybody who's into board games probably has like, oh man, I wish I could design this, or like an idea that they've come up with.
I would be willing to bet that is the case. It seems like we all have at least one idea in us. And it's really neat when you see someone that actually has the opportunity to get their idea produced. That's actually one of the things I really like about our industry is it seems like if you have a really good idea, the conventions like Gen Con and even Origins and a lot of these convention spaces are constructed in such a way that if you have a good idea, you have access to the people that can get that idea published and made. And you don't have to be some superstar. You just have to have something that makes them go, whoa, this is clever. Let's talk about this. I know that the game Love Letter was that way. Love Letter, I believe the story goes that the designer of Love Letter caught the publisher that published it, caught them as they were walking through the convention hall on their way to some other meeting. And as they were walking, he was like, let me just show you this. And then they were just like demoing it as they were walking. And the person was like, by the time they got to their destination, they're like, that was really cool. Let's have a follow-up conversation or something. But I could be totally butchering that story. That could be total fiction. But I seem to recall it was that type of thing where bumped into the right person as they were walking somewhere, showed it to them. Since it was a little micro game, it was easy to show. And that's all it took. And, that's Love Letter, which introduced that whole micro game craze from a few years ago.
There's definitely a art to pitching games and trying to figure out how to have those elevator pitches. I mean, Love Letter makes it easier because it's the amount of time it takes to play it is basically the amount of time it takes to do an elevator pitch. But there's definitely an art to being able to explain a game succinctly,
Yes, there is definitely an art to being able to concisely make that presentation for the game. Yep.
And Chaz is working on his pitch right now for his risk roll and move game.
Yeah, I'll say yeah. Well, if you have watched any videos or have been paying attention to this conversation that we're having right now, you will know that concise verbal skills are not necessarily my specialty. I had an interview once, back in college about some media work I was doing, some small press publishing in the comics, local regional comics in the Pacific Northwest. And I was interviewed by a guy about the comic. And about a month later in this little zine, the interview came out. And he said, I sat down and asked some questions, and then the answers started coming. And it was great talking to him. But here's the interview, and it was 3 extra pages of just. He's like, you didn't edit out anything I said as you were doing this. Okay. So anyway, I know that when I do a video, I do a video one of two ways. I'll either script it out ahead of time so that it's on point, or I will just record it off the cuff. But I find that if I do that, I spend just as much time editing out all the superfluous extra stuff as I would have if I had just gone and written it from scratch, written out the whole thing. So good luck to you if you have to do any editing on this video, I guess is what.
Listen, everybody's getting every second of this, every second of listen, I don't edit my guests because I want people to know who they are in person. So hopefully what it'd be like to talk to you at a convention or at a thing is exactly how this interview is going to
go. Oh, well, if you're not going to edit this out at all, then I definitely want to make sure to mention that
Cut! Okay, let me write down a little timestamp. Sometimes I do edit, especially when Chaz says that. Oh my goodness.
Wait, oh no. Well, that did not go as planned.
Now that we're back from the edit, you guys don't want to know what he said back there. Aldi, I don't know, man. No.
I thought it would be okay if all of the profanity was in German, okay? I didn't know.
Family-friendly channel. It has been a while since you've been on the Dice Tower, hasn't it?
Those old habits die quickly, I guess.
Awesome. Well, so we're coming up to the holiday season. Do you do like a lot of like family gaming around the holiday time, or is it more of just a time to get away from games and relax,
I've come to the point where I'm not able to get away from it even when I try. My mother-in-law is this 4'9" little retired preschool teacher. She looks like a Christmas elf. She has the demeanor of a Christmas elf. In fact, she loves Christmas. She starts decorating right after Thanksgiving. Their Christmas tree is huge. She is the living embodiment of, if you think of a little Christmas elf.
That's awesome.
And I introduced her, my wife's side of the family, when I started doing the videos and everything, kind of introduced them to some modern games. And now she asks me to bring some things with me every time we get together, like for Christmas or Thanksgiving or the holidays. And I've discovered that looks can be deceiving because this little elf-like tiny little retired lady has the most vicious cutthroat streak in her I've seen in everybody. We play Wits and Wagers, and she just gets laser focused on the betting and how many chips do you have? Okay, and everything. And she will just game the system more than anyone else that I have ever played that game with. And some other games I've introduced them to, Camel Up and the dice game Las Vegas, and kind of some games of that type of weight. But every single game like that, she just had this side of her personality that I've never seen comes out, and it's so neat to see that, and to have her and that side of the family actually ask me, are you going to bring that game? Are you going to bring that camel racing game? Or are you going to bring that number? Yeah. So not being able to get away from the gaming at family events and stuff, that's okay when it is for that reason of being able to share those types of experiences, with her and that side of the family. It's really nice. So,
It's always fun to like play those interesting games, and I know there's so many people that are probably like jealous of that sort of story. It's like, oh man, I wish I could play board games with my family on Christmas. And sometimes I would never if your family's not into gaming, I would just enjoy your time with your family, But also, sometimes people might be like, oh, I don't really like to play a game. But if you set up a game and start playing with the people that do want to play, you never know who might jump in, That's where a thing starts and sparks a fire in somebody. And that's how board gamers or hardcore gamers start, Everybody's got to play their first game somewhere. And a lot of times if some people see other people having fun, then a lot of times they're like, oh man, that looks cool. Let's jump in. Let's try the next round,
Mm-hmm. And it's a really neat, and that's one of the things because of the social aspect of the hobby, the table presence, like we talked about. There's all these different aspects that can draw someone in, whether it's artistic or the creative or the social aspect or just the puzzly parts of it. There's so many different facets, to the tabletop gaming hobby that can draw you in. So that's one of the things I find fascinating about it.
I think there's like so many games out there now. I almost feel like, I feel like humans in general like enjoy games in some sort or fashion. I feel like there's probably a game out there for almost anybody. Maybe they don't know that they like games, or I would never like be like, this is your game. But I feel like people enjoy gaming together and thinking through different stuff. I think it'd be hard pressed to just find someone that just doesn't like any games at all,
I agree. However, I'm going to flip that back at you. I'm going to ask you a question. You're right. With the number of games that are coming out, there's probably there's probably a game that for everyone. However, with the volume of new titles that are being released every year, do you think it's becoming a problem? Becoming harder for those people to find that game in the vast library of games that are available?
I'm sure, and that's what our job is, right? Board game media. Right. I feel like it's. At the Dice Tower, like, you cannot review every single game, but at the Dice Tower, we try to as hard as possible. Like, if anybody's trying to review every single game or showcase every single game, like, we're trying to do it. Tom reviews like 12 games a week. Like, no one else. It's so hard to get that many games played and showcase all these different things. We're just trying to let the audience out there know and everybody know, like, hey, these are the games that are cool. These are the games that people like. These are our opinions of the game. Agree with it or not. Hopefully you can look at that and be like, this looks like it fits my interest, or maybe I could play this game with this person and they'd enjoy it. And everything you guys do over there at Board Game Geek and you do on Paradise, it showcases these different games, and hopefully people can consume that content and help educate themselves as a consumer to make a informed purchase of something that they would actually like. I feel like that's the service that we do as Board Game Media, helping people find the right thing, and not waste their time on things that won't necessarily fit them.
Yeah. Do you think that the nature of our hobby, with the overhead of having to learn the game and master the rules and then teach it, do you think that the overhead that's inherent, built into our hobby, makes guides, for lack of a better word, like us, the content creators that are showcasing games, reviewing games, do you think that makes that a more necessary part to get new people into the hobby than other hobbies, like, say movies or books or comics or whatever? Do you think that it's harder for people to get into it without that sort of guidance?
Honestly, I feel like it is pretty important. People that are like, most people that are into board gaming consume some form of board game media, and things like Watch It Played and all these like playthrough videos, and like even a review. Like, if you watch a review, you can get a little hint of how that game plays, which means when you teach the game or when you actually open that rule book for the first time, it's going to be a lot easier for you to like grok, okay, I remember Tom Vassell said like this mechanic worked like this, or I remember Chaz was talking about this thing on this video, and you play the cards like this. And they're not necessarily learning exactly how to play the game, besides Rodney's videos, but then you're like, it helps people like kickstart being able to learn through the different things. Like, it kickstarts their enthusiasm for the game a little bit, I think. At least for me, like, honestly, when I get a new game, I go out there and watch a Chaz video on it, or watch a Rodney video on it, or listen to Rolling Dice and Taking Names talk about it on their podcast. It just makes it easier to learn. And it's a huge barrier. Like, rule books are intimidating, especially if you're not like a board gamer, It's like, what is this mechanic? What is that mechanic? And I think publishers have like a hard job of figuring out how to explain rules succinctly with also not skimming over things that people that are not hardcore board gamers would miss. You can't just be like, this is a deck building game, and assume people know what that means. Now we're gonna draft. Pass the cards to the left. Like, what's a draft? Is this fantasy football? I don't understand. So. Yep.
Oh yeah. Whether you're making a video or a rule book, you got to keep in mind, every single video or rule book or whatever is going to be somebody's first. And you can't take those things for granted. And I think I don't envy publishers writing a rule book, because they have to find that middle ground where they are explaining everything to the person that might be their first game, but they're also not bogging down the learning experience for someone who might be more familiar. It's got to be a very tricky balance to walk.
Yeah, for sure. And I don't know. I really like the way that board game media as a whole just has helped grow more people being interested in the hobby. I feel like if things like Board Game Geek, without all the different lists of like questions and answers and all that stuff wasn't there, and without all the different board game media, I mean, I know for a fact the hobby wouldn't be nearly as big as it is. And there's a big community around making sure you're playing the game right and learning this or that, and this is my score on this thing, you know. It's a very communal hobby, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Absolutely. It's amazing how any game that you pick up, it seems, if you're playing it and you run into a rules question, you can type that question into Board Game Geek, and on the forum, there's someone else who has already asked that question, and 10 people have answered it. And so it's not like you're alone with the questions. Whatever you've run into, someone else has run into already. And also, people aren't asking their questions out to the void. There is that community that's very active and wants to help, which is just amazing to see, especially year after year. It has continued, and I certainly continuing to grow as well, it seems.
It's definitely interesting. I was talking to Emerson about this a while back. Is that the way board games grow is kind of it's strange, because I mean, most of us are playing multiplayer games, so it's like, I'm playing the board game, I really enjoy it, so I need 3 other people to play it with me. It's a 4-player game. Cool. One of those people is like, oh man, I really like that game too, and they pick up that game, and then they need 3 other people to play it with it. And like, just board games in general, just the nature of how it's like a group thing is like sort of self-perpetuating as it grows, because everybody wants more awesome, friendly people from all different walks of life to play these games with,
And it's fascinating too, because games have been around since almost the beginning of recorded human history. Well, maybe not that far, but dang far back, ancient times at least. So they've always been present, and they've always been there, and it's not like a fad that's come and gone, but. You look. I look sometimes at like the movie industry and also the video game industry, how those have grown. And do you think that tabletop and board and card games, they've always been present, but do you think that they will ever grow to rival the number of players and the size of the video game and well, let's just say video game industry. Let's leave movies out of this, since that's a different type of thing. So, do you think that they'll ever reach that level?
I don't know. Like, it's so hard to say, because I mean, there's so much money in video games. It's like gigantic, the whole market. And I mean, I feel like the part where video games are huge are definitely these giant multiplayer games where people are playing them online together. So even in video games, the games where people come together, even for competition, or Fortnite where you're messing with each other, or Minecraft where you're playing on a server with a bunch of other people, those are the games that are really big. I mean, even you look on Twitch, like the games that are like one-player experiences or like role-playing games, there's not as many people watching that sort of games. It's these games that are like games that bring people together, and I mean, maybe for competitive reasons, but games that are multiplayer with other people are definitely bigger on those things. As far as like getting as big as that, I'm not sure. I would love to see that, but it's so hard to say, just because I don't know. It's definitely becoming more and more accepted. I mean, you look at Target, you look at all these different places. I went to the Think Geek store in the mall today, and they have Gloomhaven there. It's like, what? Gloomhaven at the Think Geek store? That's crazy.
That's cool though. I mean, Gloomhaven is not an impulse buy either.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So it's not like they have Munchkin right by the counter. If they are stocking Gloomhaven, that is an investment by Think Geek. That is really cool.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see how things have spread. I mean, role playing games are getting huge too. Like role-playing games are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And like even at Gen Con, like I went to Gen Con a couple years ago and I'd ask people questions about board games for interviews for the Dice Tower, and they'd talk about all sorts of different board games. And recently when I've done that sort of thing, everybody's just like, hey, I'm here for this Dungeons and Dragons thing or this role-playing game thing. And I mean the streams and stuff from like Critical Role and stuff like that on Twitch, and like the fact that Dungeons and Dragons is in Stranger Things. It's like tabletop gaming in general is just getting huge, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. Heck, I know that it has several TV shows, like Big Bang Theory has featured it, so I guess actually just recently there was an episode of South Park that didn't just have games in the background, but it was focused. It was actually had the Dice Tower, the Board Game Breakfast parody that was a main part of it. So yeah, I mean, they literally said Board Game Geek. They said Tom Bassel. They said Becca Scott. They said Rodney Smith. Like they said these people's names that we know, which is crazy and awesome. And like they're showing off all the different games. And I'm sure the regular everyday South Park fan is like, "What is this? Board games?" But they're showing Blood Rage. It's crazy. Yeah, so not just to be present in it as a background prop or something, but to be referenced and part of the humor. That just blew my mind for it to have reached that new like achievement unlocked type of plateau. So yeah, it makes me wonder if that's a sign of more things to come, which would be fantastic.
I think it's interesting because like I feel like there's this big D&D boom going on right now, but I played a ton of D&D back when I was younger and didn't have kids, but I feel like as people get older and move into like, I don't know that I can play this scenario campaign every single week. Sometimes like you'll shift from all these awesome role-playing games you're playing into board gaming as well. So we might see more people coming over. It's like, I can't play Magic anymore because I can't afford to play it because set rotation. Let's play board games, I feel like that's literally how I got super stuck on board games, is the fact that, I was playing Magic and I was playing D&D and I was unable to do that. And a board game, you can put on the table and teach anyone, come around the table and learn it real quick. So, I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how things grow. And I mean, there's so many people that are like, there's this board game bubble and it's going to pop. I don't really see that happening. I feel like there will be companies that come and go, but overall, people are really enjoying the interactions with each other. You still think it's going to pop? You're a naysayer, Chaz Marler.
I have seen some wiser decisions being made by the publishers and distributors in our industry over the last couple of years, which is nice. But I still have concerns. I mean, come on, I got to have something to worry about. So I know that there's at least 3,000 titles that are released each year. I mean, so that is nearly 10 games a day being released in your store every single day, weekend, weekday, holiday, what have you. 10 games a day? How sustainable really can this be? And yeah, publishers may, merge or collapse or whatever, which is kind of a healthy, natural thing for an industry to do. My concern is just if there begins to be such a glut of games that in order to gain the consumer's attention, things become more and more gimmicky. And that's where I start, if I see that type of thing happening, that's where I start to get concerned for the health of our industry. But like I said, the last couple of years, I think I've seen that dialed back a little bit, which has been nice. But I don't know. You never know.
It's definitely a hard time for like the publishers and designers these days, because everybody's like, it's really hard to have this title that's an evergreen title or anything like that, just because there's so many new games coming out, and it's always on to the next game and the next game and the next game and the next game. But it's crazy how far it's come and how much of an interest there is in all of these games, because I mean, people are still buying games currently and still playing tons of games. Who knows, We'll see. Yep. I don't think people are going to stop playing board games, though. I mean, the publishers should probably just be maybe a little bit more wise about how many titles they're releasing and try to like do the Days of Wonder model and release like a really good game, you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely something to be said for producing something of quality over quantity of games. If there was an easy answer to the question, of course, it would be answered already.
Right.
But I think that as long as people keep playing games, like you said, I don't think people are going to stop playing games. That's what makes me so excited. Is kind of going back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. I don't think the renaissance in tabletop gaming that we're seeing going on right now and have been seeing for almost at least a decade, it seems, at this point, I don't think it's a fad. I think it's something that's just becoming part of our overall culture. And it might last for, another couple of years. It might last for the generation. It might just be something that becomes a staple of the culture and, is more present than it ever was before, just because of the quality of the games. Mm-hmm. Again, if there was an easy answer to that question, I'm sure someone would have answered it already. But I'm hoping beyond hope that you're right and that the gaming is just going to be something that's a little more omnipresent and not just a fad that fades away.
It's crazy because like back in the day when probably we first started gaming, it's like you didn't go out and tell everybody, oh yeah, I play board games and I go play D&D, because people would sort of shun that a little bit, It was kind of like a taboo sort of thing. Oh, you play D&D? What do you play in your mom's basement? Nobody says that anymore. It's on TV shows, it's on all the different stuff, and it's almost like it's the cool thing to do now, which is kind of weird to say, Oh, your board gaming hobby, you're one of the cool kids playing board games. What? Is that a thing? Yeah,
the rise of geek culture, I think, has helped our hobby
For
tremendously.
sure.
Yeah. I mean, back in middle school, high school, it's like, dang it, why couldn't the environment for geek culture be like it is now, like it was back then, darn it.
Everybody's playing board games now that I don't have time,
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, exactly.
I remember back when Pokemon was huge, and I was already playing different games, and I had my deck of Pokemon cards when Pokemon was huge, at the height of Pokemon cards, when everybody's talking about it. And I'd always meet up with the kids in the neighborhood and be like, hey, let's play Pokemon. And they'd be like, you play this game? I thought we just traded the cards. No, I'll help you build a deck. We can play against each other. And they're like, I mean, no. And I'd be like, okay. I would always trade away my foils for other cards that were actually good for my deck, and people were like, what are you doing? You don't just want the shiny ones? I'm like, no, I'm trying to play this game. So I don't know. It's interesting how fads come and go and who's actually into I don't know. It's just a weird thing.
Yeah. my daughter, who she's in 7th grade, so probably when she was in 5th grade a couple of years ago, she went through the phase, her and all of her friends got Pokemon cards. Uh-huh. And that's what she wanted for her birthday that year, and that's what we would get every time we'd go to the store. She'd say, oh, can I get a pack of cards? I don't know if I ever saw her play an actual game, but she did talk about and trade the cards a lot. She knew all the characters, but yeah, I don't know if I ever saw her actually play.
Oh man, I was always in that CCG mindset, oh, let's do this and do that. This guy's real cool. He's got cool attacks.
Yeah. Now Magic was that way. Magic, the Gathering was and before the internet was so prevalent too, you would go down to the store, open a pack, and you would discover a card. You didn't have no idea this existed. There were no spoilers online. It's what? There's a card that does this, and you'd go and you'd make combos based off that. That sense of discovery. It's rarer and rarer, it seems, especially being more and more involved in the industry. But that had to experience that sense of discovery. But man, when you can get a game, maybe that's one of the reasons why legacy games are so enjoyable for me. For sure. A game that can capture that sense of discovery and I didn't know this could happen. That's just so amazing when that happens.
Yeah, it's crazy because I feel like Richard Garfield was trying to rebuild that sort of thing with Keyforge, but now there's online groups that they spoil all the cards immediately as soon as they open all the packs. And it's just kind of well, there's still no discovery in this game, So.
Yeah, that's true. They got access to all this information that you didn't have back in 1992 or 93 or whenever it was. And the other thing with Keyforge that, again, if I want to try to find something to worry about that concerns me, is Keyforge, while being an absolutely excellent set of mechanisms and the way the game is put together. It's a great game, but there's no deck building. So there's not, which is nice. Some people like that. It's like, I don't have to worry about making a deck. I can just go buy a pack. I'm ready to go. But you're not discovering a combo and building a deck around it and then going, look what I made. This little engine I made. This worked. I won a game with this concept I came up with. And it's just, I don't know. To me personally, and this is just me speaking, I actually started playing Keyforge year before last when it came out. And what Keyforge did for me was actually reignite the spark for Magic the Gathering and got me back into playing Magic.
That's crazy. Yeah.
And so I don't know if that story, if other people have had that same experience with it or what, or if it's just not you're a loon. Keyforge is great, but I know it is a fundamental difference though that there's something in there that tangible or there's a difference that you just don't get with one game versus the other. Yeah,
I thought the whole like pre-built decks thing was a very interesting idea, but I was like, it would be crazy if they take it one step further. It's like, okay, cool, they've got the whole like computers are building the decks for you and you have these pre-made decks. I was like, take it a step further, build the algorithm in the computer, let the computer like make the cards, where it's like the designer of the game doesn't know what's actually in the game, because the computer made the cards. Like, I was like, just take it a step further and see what happens. You open a pack with a card in it that, like, no one knows exists, That would be the real sense of discovery. I mean, you'd have to build an algorithm that's super, like, smart to be able to be like, okay, well, these are the point values for this, and this is that, and have some crazy art that could be put around, like, with the other stuff. But, like, you could be like, you could have pluses and minuses and all sorts of stuff. You could own a card that, like, no one else has ever, and no one else knows exists until you like post it and like, I'm the only one with this card ever,
Okay, on one hand, that would be absolutely fantastic and fascinating to see. On the other hand, though, I'm pretty sure
how would you ever balance that?
Well, no, I'm pretty sure that's how Skynet was developed.
Listen, man, I actually had a one of these spaces between with Ryan Courtney, which is the designer of Pipeline, and his background is actually in like machine learning and AI and all that stuff. So we were talking about how like AI and things could be used in games to make games more interesting and like how it could develop. It's just really interesting that field. And you're right. It is kind of scary because that is how Skynet starts. First it's beating people in board games, and then it's beating people in Dota, and then it's like, Yeah.
But man, what a way to go. If that's how it's got to be, okay.
What do you mean you're not on the back end working on the self-learning machines on Board Game Geek? I thought that was your job.
I've said too much.
It's aggregating all of your data. It knows exactly what games you want to play so that this advertisement pops up. You've been sold.
Yeah. So, yeah, that would... I think that it's only a matter of time before that happens. So enjoy your free will while you still have it.
It is interesting to think about, I mean, with the merger of apps and board games, like how some of those sort of systems could be used. I mean, the problem is the board game industry doesn't have the profits to be able to make like self-learning stuff in their games. But it's kind of crazy what could happen in the future.
Oh yeah, as those lines between apps and the electronic integration and the tabletop analog versions, as those lines blur, there's a lot of potential there for innovation. And it's going to be really interesting to see what happens. There's the the name of it is escaping me, but I believe at Gen Con, CMON or Come On Games,
the Tabaroo or whatever.
Yes, exactly. The Tabaroo, where you could, basically you had the nice digital tabletop. That was electronic, and you could even play remotely against other people with it. That was something that blurred those lines even further.
Yeah, that was really cool. I got a chance to play that at Gen Con, and it was really cool the way that like it would know what characters were in what rooms, and different things would trigger based off it. The really cool thing was the fact that it had like these electronic dice that you roll, and it's like, oh, you killed 2 zombies, and you're just like, I didn't even register what I had rolled yet, and the machine already knows, hey, get rid of these 2 zombies, I think that'll be an interesting way to lower the barrier of entry for gaming. I'm sure it'll be expensive, so that doesn't help the barrier there. But as far as like learning the game, you can just. I thought like playing with an app would make it feel less immersive, but the fact that a lot of the like math and stuff was taken out, it just made the game feel more immersive because we're playing through the game and there's all these story moments popping up, and I don't know, it was very interesting. I'm really excited to see that actually come out.
I think that's fair. Yeah, you were able to spend less time doing the mental bookkeeping and more time in the creative headspace for it.
Right.
And so I can see that. Because that yes, see, but again, if I'm gonna be concerned about Taboo or anything like that, my concern is if you're taking away a lot of that bookkeeping, well, do I feel like I'm not playing a game as much? Am I just sitting there rolling some dice and then it tells me this happened? So to hear that it actually allowed you to feel more immersed, that's very encouraging.
Yeah, it was definitely interesting because I went into it thinking like, oh, what's this new technology going to be? And I came out like, we played a cool game, and I was more worried about, man, that was a really cool experience with the sound effects, and when we rolled the dice, it made noises like, you killed a zombie, and when more zombies came on the board, it made noises, and then like we'd interact with an NPC, and it'd give you dialogue and choices of what to make and what to say to the NPC, and it ended up, instead of me being like, oh man, cool tablets and cool board, it was just like, man, that was a really cool story and a really cool experience when I came out of it. I was just like, I didn't expect that going in,
Nice. Yeah. And I think that's what they're shooting for, is for the players to be able to focus on the experience instead of everything else. And that's good. Of course, the other question along with that is, with the more and more electronic and software integration, when does a tabletop game like that stop being a board game and turn into something else? That.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I mean, that is so electronic, Yeah. But the question is, why do you play board games? What is the draw? Is it about being around the table with other people, high-fiving at cool moments? Because playing that game definitely had it. Like, oh my goodness, he got the chainsaw and took out all these zombies in this one room. We thought we were going to be swarmed. High five all around the table. I was still there with friends and still there with people that were excited about playing the game together. But a lot of the things of, oh man, you need this to hit or that to hit, or this thing has to be exactly like this, was taken away. Which, I mean, maybe that's a lot of what people like, is doing the, okay, I need a +5 on this, and then I get this bonus over here. I mean, that's fun for people too,
Yeah, but no, I like. I'm drawn to what you said. You're right. If a lot of why we're getting together for these games is the stories, the time with our friends, and those moments, if it fosters those moments, then who cares how much electronics and software are running it? If it is all about the moments, which I think it is. So.
And I think the thing that board games is really good at, as opposed to video games, that in video games you're all like staring at a screen. In board games, and even in the Taboo thing, you're all like looking at each other like, hey, what are you going to do? Discussing that sort of thing. And I mean, that's one of the reasons that I really enjoy co-ops, is that you're actually working together and figuring things out as a team and learning something about each other even outside of the game. It's like, oh man, this person always likes to do this thing. He always runs into battle, and this person's the guy who's like, well, let's think this problem out. Let's solve this together. I don't know. It's an interesting way to build relationships, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. And you're right. I thought you were going to say, though, at first, on a video game, you're staring at the screen, and on a tabletop game, you're staring at your phone between turns. So I'm glad that's not the direction that the conversation went.
Well, that is why I like to play. I mean, I wouldn't really say flack because I don't really care, but everybody's like, Roy just likes the thematic games, this and that. I play plenty of other games that are very heady and Euro, and I actually do quite well at them most of the time, but I really enjoy the ones that are more about things done together, I mean, even if it's a competitive game, like if it's an area control game, like, oh my goodness, you have to negotiate not to jump on my area and this area, and when you're actually doing it together. I know there's a lot of people that really enjoy those games that are very much like a spreadsheet and min-maxing your points, and it's everybody's almost solo, and they really enjoy the how much can I make this efficient for like my gameplay. And I mean, everybody likes different things, and there's no right or wrong answer to how you play your board games, but I guess different things are going to appeal to different people.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, and I love those experiences when there's a group playing the game and it's a game that can immerse them enough that they start making choices based on the character that they're playing instead of just necessarily themselves. It's like, well, I'm the emperor of this section of Japan, so it's my honor of my house is very important to me, so I'm absolutely not going to take that trade deal. It's like, well, wait, it would be better for you, if you think about it, the point wise, it'd be better for you. Like, no, but the honor, we would not do that. So I love it when the game can transcend those types of moments and bring out that in people.
Oh man, I mean, some of the best moments I've had in games is like when you're like getting ready to do the last jump in Battlestar Galactica, and you're like, oh man, you got to hit the FTL drive, or the Cylons are going to take over the ship. And you're like, okay, I'm going to do an executive order for you to go over there and hit the FTL because I'm trapped in like the sick bay or whatever. And like, okay, cool, do it. And it's like, okay, here, direct order. Okay, I'm a Cylon, and you're like, it's just this crazy, interesting scenarios of things that can happen that you'll never forget. It's like,
yep.
I remember that time Nate did that thing and stabbed us all in the back. Cylon! It's just like these memories are fun and interesting moments that you share together with people. And I don't know if you can get the same feeling out of like, I fed my workers in Agricola, that sort of thing.
Yeah, for someone though, it might be. I was able to feed 127 workers that game. I was able to get my point value up there and maximized it higher than I've ever had. That might be something that's used for. Yeah, So everyone's different, but I know what you mean. Those types of experiences. They're my favorite game of Betrayal on the House of Hill that I've ever played. I was the traitor in it. I turned against everyone else. But in the game, everyone except one player had died, and my goal was I had to kill. But the house started to implode. Like the tiles were coming off, like the ceiling was caving in. Nice. And there was this the last player was on the top floor down this long hallway. And there was a magic elevator at the end that would take them down to the exit. So I remember that last round, that last player was running down the hallway as tiles were collapsing down behind them. And if the roof landed on them, they were going to die. So everyone was cheering, run, 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 run. And even me as the traitor, I was like, run, run. I just want to see this happen. I want to see you make it. And, even to have the bad guy cheering for everyone else playing, because everyone's like, I want to see this happen so we can tell this story about how you were just running, all these roof tiles are falling down behind you and the rooms are collapsing and you dove in the elevator and made it just in time before the house imploded completely. Those type of moments, again, that just transcend the players where they get into it that much with their characters and the events going on. They're just the most amazing experiences that you can have.
I feel like that's one of the main reasons that I really enjoy playing board games, especially with good friends or with new friends, and it's a great way to meet people, especially when we go to all these cons and conventions, playing games and sharing games that you love with someone that maybe hasn't discovered that yet.
Oh yeah. And it's so amazing. It's really special. That I've been going to conventions now for at least 4 years at least. Mm-hmm. So Gen Con, Origins, and at least one other, it seems, every year for the last 4 years. So and over just so that dozen to 15 or so different conventions, I have started to I've met people at these conventions that you see again at the next one, and you sit down and you play with, and a few of these people have actually kind of you look forward to seeing them, and they become friends, and you keep in touch outside the conventions. There's a couple that I met at Origins a few times, and I've played some games with them at Origins and stuff, but they live in North Carolina. But they were visiting friends and family.
Is this Tony and Marty?
No. There are other people from North Carolina. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay. I thought they were the only people there.
Yeah, just them. But anyway, they were traveling up the coast, and they were traveling through my town just like 4 weeks ago on the day that there's one of my local game club get-togethers.
Oh, that's awesome.
So they stopped by, and we played there at this game club meeting, and it was like, wow, if it wasn't for these conventions, I wouldn't even have known you. And here you are traveling all the way across the country, stop by, and we're hanging out together. And it was a really cool experience that would not have without this whole the convention circuit and everything else, and the people that you meet at these that surprisingly create these lasting relationships.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, that's why I enjoy having a podcast. It's all about banter and talking and just getting to know other gamers and getting to foster those relationships. I mean, there's so much of gaming that even happens just talking about the games, It's like, oh, after we played this game, man, remember that time, remember this time? And I mean, for years you'll have those things like, remember that time we played that game of Betrayal House on the Hill and you were running for the door, It's like an interesting bond that can build between people. That can help people through all sorts of different things. You never know what someone's going through, and maybe they'll think back about different times that you've spent together, and it'll help pull people through.
It's true. Yeah, it's absolutely true. I know that there's been times too where I'll be at a convention and kind of especially like Gen Con and the larger ones, I kind of get to the point where it's like I just feel like I'm lost in a sea of people, and having those anchors, sometimes it's like, oh, hey, I know you. And someone will come up and chat and say hi. And they're like, oh, I don't want to bug you because I know you're busy or whatever. But, remember we talked last Gen Con and we had a good conversation. And inside, sometimes it's like, I'm so glad that you came by, and said hi to me, even though you think, I might be busy. And we are busy. I'm just so glad to have a familiar face come by. And it actually means a lot to me to give me that moment of center me in that moment, before I have to go off to the next, publisher's booth or next meeting or whatever. So it's really nice. And that, I guess the point is that door of meaning a lot to people swings both ways for everyone too.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm sure that's definitely important because I know you've talked a lot about, like anxiety about going to these conventions and things like that, especially for people that have that sort of social anxiety and it's hard to get out there and meet people. I mean, it's nice to have those familiar faces and people that you can be comfortable around when you go to these sort of things.
Yeah. And actually, to be honest, people have asked me, does it get easier, with everything? And I know that the social anxiety, the awkwardness, and just the being drained from being in large crowds and stuff,
Yeah, for sure.
It's nice to be able to go back and recharge in a room. However, it does get easier, I have found. And part of that is the practice and the routines you discover and you get into. But every single convention I go to, there's fewer and fewer strangers, it feels like. There's more and more people I recognize. And it's like, oh, hey, I know that guy. Oh, this is like an extended group of friends more and more. And that actually helps. That actually makes a significant improvement in the whole experience sometimes. And like I said, every convention, it seems like there are more and more of those familiar, friendly faces in that circle.
Yeah, that's one of the things, I don't know. I love the board games, and I love seeing new games, and I love playing games with people, but just building those friendships and relationships is a lot of fun too. Like, oh man, I love talking to this person from this board game media or that publisher over there, and you see the same people over and over again that you've built up these friendships maybe from playing a game with them or maybe just from talking to them at their booth or whatever, and it's just awesome to have that camaraderie with people.
Yep. Yeah, it definitely is. It's nice too because it gives us all some sort of central place to come from too. No matter what aspect of the hobby and what genre of games you like, there's something central to that we can all kind of branch off of, which a common interest, which is really nice and helps a lot too.
Awesome. Well, we've hit our 1 hour mark, Chaz, so I guess I will start to wrap this thing up. Where can people find your content? Where can people hit you up if they wanna know more about what you do?
There's 3 major places to find me at. The first one is going to be the Pair of Dice Paradise YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/pairofdiceparadise. And I'll make sure I enunciate that every time I say it now. So if you ever start a YouTube channel, be sure to give it the most confusing name possible because people like that. Also on Twitter, at Dice Paradise. That's hanging out on Twitter a lot, and that's my Twitter handle. And also the videos I'm producing for Board Game Geek on the Board Game Geek TV YouTube channel. Each month I'm doing a top 10 countdown of the games that are ranked the highest on the daily hotness list. And also I'm doing a monthly game show with different board game media people called Who's Playing What Now, where we try to guess what games are being played by the most people most frequently. And Roy, you have got to join me. I have to return the favor, and you need to join me as a contestant on the Who's Playing What Now as soon as possible.
Aw, snap. I know Sam was just on like your last episode, so if anybody hasn't seen, you definitely have to go check out Chaz and Sam with their episode as well. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I definitely have enjoyed your content for a long time, and it's awesome to see all the things you've done and all the stuff you're doing with Board Game Geek and with Paradise. And it's cool to, having met you at some cons, that I can say Chaz is my friend now, too. So
I know, right? I could count on one hand the amount of like actual conversations more than 2 minutes that we've been able to have up to this point. So it's nice to actually sit down and have a real in-depth conversation.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, we're both working at completely different booths on the other sides of the floor half the time, so it's awesome.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you for having me.
If anybody wants to check these out, you can check them out on iTunes. If you search Spaces Between, you can check out the audio there, and then the actual video is posted on the Dice Tower on Monday at 5 p.m. So make sure to check out all the episodes, having all sorts of awesome people on the Spaces Between show. Thanks so much, everybody, for joining us, and thanks again, Chaz. I'll see everybody next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.